Stay away from my car, you filthy grease monkey. Victoria. Ashford's voice cracked like a whip across the polished showroom floor as she shoved Raymond Nelson so hard he stumbled back into a toolbox metal clattering against marble. 300 people froze. Journalists raised their phones. And Raymond, a 35-year-old single father, with grease under his fingernails and a 7-year-old daughter watching from the waiting room, simply straightened his back and smiled. Because Victoria didn't know it yet, but she'd just humiliated the only man on Earth who could fix her $12 million Ferrari. Before we begin, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from, and please subscribe so you don't miss where this story goes. The alarm clock struck 4:30 in the morning, and Raymond Nelson was already awake. He always was. He sat on the edge of the thin mattress in the cramped bedroom of their rented duplex in the Mission District, rubbing his calloused hands across his face, trying to chase the last hour of sleep from his eyes. 42 hours. That was how many he'd worked that week, and it was only Wednesday. The numbers never added up anymore. The rent kept climbing. His mother's medication kept getting more expensive. And Lily was growing out of her shoes faster than he could buy new ones. Daddy. He turned. His 7-year-old daughter stood in the doorway clutching a stuffed rabbit that was missing one ear. Her dark curls were wild from sleep. "Hey, baby girl, what are you doing up?" "I had a bad dream." Raymond patted the mattress beside him. Lily climbed up and buried her face against his ribs. He wrapped one thick arm around her small shoulders. "Tell me about it." "You were gone," she whispered. "Like Mommy. You just went away." He closed his eyes. Sarah had been gone 3 years now. Cancer. 4 months from diagnosis to the funeral. The insurance hadn't covered half of it, and he'd been paying off the medical bills ever since $150 at a time. But he never told Lily that. He never told anyone. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart," he said. "Not ever." "Promise?" "I promise." Down the hall, his mother's voice called out thin and rasping. Raymond, is that you?" "I've got her," he whispered to Lily. "You stay put." He pulled on his work pants and walked to his mother's room. Dorothy Nelson was 68 years old and looked 80. The stroke 2 years ago had taken most of the strength out of her left side, and the diabetes took the rest. She sat propped against 3 pillows, silver hair scattered across the pillowcase. "I need my pills, honey." "I know, Mama. Let me get your water." "And the insulin, Raymond. Don't forget the insulin. I never forget." He moved through the motions he knew by heart. Water. Pills. A check of her blood sugar. The small tender kiss on her forehead that she claimed she didn't need but always smiled at. And then the walk back down the hall to get Lily dressed, to pack her lunch, to start another impossible day. By 5:45, he had Lily in the passenger seat of his 1998 Chevy pickup, her little backpack on her lap. "Daddy," she said as they pulled onto Mission Street, "can I come to your work today?" "Baby, I told you. But Grandma's tired, and Mrs. Patterson said her sister is sick, so she can't watch me." Raymond's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He'd forgotten. He'd completely forgotten that Mrs. Patterson had called last night about her sister. He had no one else. The after-school program cost $60 a day, and he didn't have $60 to his name until Friday. "Okay," he said quietly. "But you're going to sit in the break room and read your books, you understand. No running around. My boss doesn't like it when we have family at the shop." "I'll be good, I promise." He glanced at her. 7 years old, already understanding things no 7-year-old should have to understand. Titan Automotive sat on a stretch of boulevard lined with palm trees and valet stands, the kind of neighborhood where a man like Raymond stood out the moment he stepped onto the pavement. The showroom windows held Bentleys and Aston Martins. The repair garage tucked around the back serviced cars that cost more than most houses. Raymond had been working there 11 years. 11 years, and he still got stopped at the front gate twice a month by security guards who didn't recognize him. He parked his pickup behind the dumpster the way he always did, because Mr. Callahan didn't like the sight of an old truck in the lot. He took Lily's hand. He walked her in through the service entrance. There he is. Raymond didn't have to look up to know who was talking. Preston Whitmore, 31 years old, son of a hedge fund manager, proud holder of an engineering degree from a school his father had donated a building to. Preston had been the head technician at Titan for 2 years. He wore tailored coveralls that had never seen a drop of oil, and he carried a tablet around the shop like it was a clipboard in a hospital drama. Nelson, you know the policy about kids in the shop. She's going to sit in the break room, Preston. She won't bother anyone. That's not what I asked you. Raymond stopped. He looked at Preston. He looked at his daughter. And then he did what he always did. He swallowed every word he wanted to say, and he spoke the only ones that would keep him employed. I understand the policy. My sitter canceled this morning. I'll make sure she stays out of the way. Make sure she does, Preston said. Because Ms. Ashford is coming in today, and if she sees a child running around her Ferrari, it'll be your job on the line, not mine. The word dropped like a stone into still water. Ashford. Raymond had never met her in person. He'd only seen her face on the covers of business magazines, on cable news, on the sides of buses, rolling through downtown. Victoria Ashford, 38 years old, founder and CEO of Ashford Vertex, a software company valued at $11 billion. She was the kind of rich that had its own weather system. And for the last 18 months, her 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, one of only 36 ever built, valued at over $12 million, had been sitting in the back of the Titan garage refusing to run right. 6 different master technicians had tried to fix it. 6 different master technicians had failed. Preston had been the last, which was why Preston had been walking around the shop lately with a very tight jaw. I'll keep her out of the way, Raymond repeated. See that you do. Raymond led Lily to the break room. He sat her down at the round table in the corner with her coloring books and her juice box. He kissed the top of her head. 2 hours, baby, that's all. Then Mrs. Patterson should be off the hook with her sister, and she'll come pick you up. Can you be brave for 2 hours? I can be brave all day, Lily said. He almost cried right there. I know you can. He walked out onto the shop floor. The Ferrari sat on the far lift, covered in a white cloth, the way a body might be covered at a crime scene. Every mechanic in the shop had orders not to touch it without Preston's direct supervision. The car had become a kind of legend in the building. The $1 million mystery, the guys called it. Nobody could figure out why the engine hesitated, why the idle stumbled, why the whole thing felt, as one of the older guys had put it, like it's trying to tell you something but won't spit it out. Raymond walked past the Ferrari without looking at it. He had a transmission to rebuild on a Mercedes SL65, and he got to work. He'd been under the Mercedes for about 90 minutes when he heard the first set of heels click against the polished concrete. Where is Whitmore? The voice was sharp, not loud, sharp. The kind of voice that sliced through ambient noise the way a blade slices through paper. Raymond slid out from under the car just enough to see from the shoulders down. Navy pantsuit, Louboutin heels, a purse that probably cost more than his truck. Victoria Ashford. Ms. Ashford, pleasure to see you again. Preston's voice 20 feet away, suddenly 3 octaves too smooth. Don't. She cut him off. Where is my car? We're making real progress this week, I assure you. Preston, I gave you the car 18 months ago. Every week for the last 14 weeks, you have told me you are making real progress. The only progress I have seen is on your invoices, which are now at $230,000 and counting. With respect, Ms. Ashford, this is a vehicle of extraordinary complexity. I know what it is. I own it. Raymond slid the rest of the way out from under the Mercedes. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on a shop rag, staying near the workbench, trying to be invisible. He'd learned long ago that the best strategy when rich people were fighting was to find a wall and pretend you were part of it. Victoria was walking toward the Ferrari now, Preston trailing behind her like a scolded retriever. She pulled the white cloth off herself, letting it pool on the floor. Her fingers manicured, a pale rose ran along the silver-blue hood. I inherited this car from my grandfather, she said. And the voice shifted just for a moment, just enough for Raymond to catch it. He kept it running for 42 years. 42. He never once took it to a shop. He did it himself. And now I've given it to you for 18 months, and you can't even make it idle properly. Ms. Ashford, I promise you. Stop promising me things, Preston. Start delivering them. Yes, Ms. Ashford. She turned, and her eyes landed on Raymond. He didn't move. He didn't look away either. He'd learned that too. Looking away too fast made rich people suspicious. Who is this? She said. Preston turned, saw Raymond, and his whole face hardened. That's just one of our general technicians, Nelson. He works on the lower-end vehicles. Lower-end vehicles, Mercedes, Porsche, Bentley. Apparently those were lower-end vehicles now. Nelson. Victoria tilted her head. Why are you staring at my car? I wasn't, ma'am. You were. Raymond hesitated. He had been staring. He'd heard the Ferrari the moment he pulled into the lot that morning, the engine idling for its warm-up test, and something in the sound had caught him. Something subtle. A hesitation. A hitch. He hadn't been able to put it into words, but his body knew. His body had been doing this work since he was 14 years old, when his father had taken him out to the garage behind their house in Oakland and said, "Son, the engine talks to you. Your job is to learn the language." He'd learned, but he couldn't say any of that. So he said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I'll get back to my work." Did I ask you to get back to your work? No, ma'am. Then I'm asking a question. Why were you looking at my car? Preston stepped between them. Ms. Ashford Nelson doesn't have the credentials to comment on a vehicle of this caliber. He's an hourly tech. He deals with fluid changes, suspension work, that kind of thing. Raymond felt something hot move up the back of his neck. Fluid changes, suspension work, that kind of thing. 11 years. Victoria didn't look at Preston. Her eyes stayed on Raymond. Is that true? Nelson, do you just change fluids? He opened his mouth to say yes. He didn't get the word out. Because just then a small voice from the direction of the break room door said, "Daddy." Everybody turned. Lily stood in the doorway, holding her stuffed rabbit, her juice box empty in her other hand. "Daddy, the bathroom is locked, and there's a lady at the—" She stopped when she saw Victoria, 7 years old, already reading rooms the way her father had taught her to read engines. Raymond moved fast. "Baby, go back inside. I'll be there in 1 second. But—" "Now, sweetheart, please." She went. Raymond turned back to Victoria with his stomach somewhere around his knees. The expression on Victoria Ashford's face was not one he had been prepared for. It wasn't annoyance. It wasn't curiosity. It was something colder, something contemptuous. "You brought a child to work," she said. "To a repair facility, around machinery and vehicles worth millions of dollars. Ma'am, my child care fell through this morning. She's— I don't care why." "Ma'am, I don't care why, Nelson. I care that my $12 million automobile is in the same building as a 7-year-old child who is unsupervised. And I care that the man who is supposed to be working on fluid changes is clearly not focused on his job because he is distracted by his personal life." "Ms. Ashford," Preston said, and Raymond could hear the smile in his voice without looking, "I can assure you that this kind of thing is not representative of our standards at Titan. Nelson has been a persistent issue. I've been meaning to speak to Mr. Callahan about—" "Be quiet, Preston." Silence. Victoria took one step toward Raymond, then another, until she was close enough that he could smell her perfume, something sharp and expensive that didn't belong in a garage. "How old is the girl?" "7, ma'am." "And her mother?" Raymond's jaw locked. "Her mother passed, ma'am. 3 years ago." For the briefest fraction of a moment, something moved across Victoria's face. He saw it. He almost saw it. It was gone before he could name it. And then her spine straightened, and the armor was back in place. "That's unfortunate," she said in a tone that suggested it was not in fact unfortunate at all. "But it's not my problem. This," she gestured at the Ferrari, "is my problem. And my problem requires professionals. Not grease monkeys playing single father while billion-dollar vehicles sit neglected 10 feet away. The word hit Raymond like a fist. Grease monkey. He had heard it before, of course. He'd heard it his whole career. From wealthy customers, from rude teenagers, at the counter from his ex-wife's parents, the one time he'd had dinner with them before Sarah married him anyway. He had always let it slide off his back, because he had always been too tired and too poor and too responsible for too many people to fight every fight that came to him. But he had never heard it while his daughter was 20 feet away. He had never heard it while his daughter could probably hear it. He opened his mouth, and for the first time in 11 years, Raymond Nelson was about to say something he would not be able to take back. Something that would cost him his job. Something that would cost him his daughter's dinner on Friday, his mother's insulin on Tuesday, the rent on the 1st of next month. But he could not stop the words rising in his throat. And then 20 feet away, his daughter's small voice said from behind the break room door, the door she had already been told to close, "Don't call my daddy that lady." Everybody froze. Victoria turned. Lily stood in the doorway again. Rabbit in her hand. Chin lifted. Eyes wet. Voice shaking, but absolutely steady. "My daddy is not a grease monkey. My daddy is the best mechanic in the whole world. My grandpa said so before he died. And my daddy works harder than anyone I ever met. So don't you call him that, not ever." Silence. Complete silence. Even the air compressors seemed to hold their breath. Victoria stared at the child. The child stared back. Raymond moved. He crossed the floor in 3 strides, scooped his daughter up, and held her tight against his chest. "I'm sorry, Ms. Ashford," he said, his voice low and tight. "I'll take my daughter and I'll go home. I'll have my tools out of here by the end of the day." Nelson. He kept walking. Nelson. He stopped. He didn't turn around. "Put the child down." "No, ma'am." Preston made a small choked sound behind them. Victoria said very quietly, "I didn't say put her down to hurt her. I said put her down because I would like to speak to you both. I would like to apologize to her." Raymond turned slowly. Victoria Ashford was looking at his daughter, and the armor was cracked. Not gone, not open, but cracked. "I spoke to your father," she said to Lily, "in a way that I should not have spoken to him. I used a word that was beneath me. I am sorry." Lily looked at her for a long moment. Then Lily said, "You should be." Raymond almost dropped her. Victoria blinked, and then to Raymond's absolute astonishment, she laughed. Just once, a short, surprised sound as if it had escaped her without permission. "You should be," she repeated. "Yes, I suppose I should." She turned to Preston. The armor was back. "Preston, Mr. Nelson and I are going to have a conversation. Alone. About my car. You are going to go to Mr. Callahan's office and explain to him that effective immediately, Nelson is temporarily reassigned from his current duties to be my primary contact on the Ferrari situation until further notice. You are also going to explain that if anyone in this building gives him any trouble about this, including you, they will be answering to me personally. Do you understand me?" Ms. Ashford with respect. "Do you understand me, Preston?" "Yes, Ms. Ashford." "Go." Preston went. He didn't look at Raymond. He didn't dare. But Raymond caught the expression on his face as he walked past the muscle jumping in his jaw, the white knuckles on the tablet he was holding, and Raymond knew. Raymond had seen that look before on his mother's ex-husband, on his high school principal, on every man who had ever decided Raymond Nelson was going to pay a price later for something he hadn't actually done. Preston Whitmore was not going to let this go, but that was a problem for another hour, another day. Right now, Raymond was standing in the middle of a garage he had worked in for 11 years, holding his 7-year-old daughter, listening to one of the richest women in America tell him that she wanted to speak to him alone about a $12 million Ferrari that 6 master technicians had failed to repair. He looked down at his daughter. Lily was watching Victoria with those enormous brown eyes. Not afraid. Not anymore. "Daddy," she whispered. "Tell her. Tell her what baby. What you heard. In the engine. This morning. When we drove up." Raymond stared at his daughter. He had not told Lily anything about what he'd heard in the engine that morning. Not a single word. But she had known. Somehow in that way children sometimes know things they have no business knowing. She had known that her father had heard something. That he had walked past the Ferrari, and he had heard something, and he had kept walking, because he had been too tired, and too afraid, and too certain that nobody in this building was ever going to listen to a man like him. His daughter had known. And his daughter was looking up at him now, her small face serious as a judge, telling him it was time. Raymond Nelson, 35 years old, single father, son of a stroke survivor, widower of a woman he had loved more than his own breath, set his daughter down gently on the polished concrete floor. He took her small hand in his large one. He turned to the richest woman he had ever met in his life, and he said quietly but clearly enough, that every mechanic in the bay would later swear they heard it. "Yes, ma'am. I'll tell you exactly what's wrong with your car." Victoria Ashford looked at him. For a long moment she did not answer. Then she nodded once and said only, "Good." And Raymond felt his daughter's fingers tighten around his own. Victoria Ashford did not move for several seconds after Raymond spoke. She simply looked at him the way a woman might look at a slot machine that had suddenly unexpectedly started paying out. "Follow me," she said. "Ma'am, I can't leave my daughter." "Bring her." Raymond blinked. "Ma'am." "You heard me, Nelson. Bring her. I have a conference room upstairs. There's a sofa. She can color while we talk." Victoria turned on her heel and started walking. "And stop calling me ma'am. My name is Victoria." "Yes, Ma." Raymond caught himself. "Yes, Victoria." Lily squeezed his hand harder as they followed her across the shop floor. Every mechanic in the bay was staring. Raymond could feel the eyes on the back of his neck like heat lamps. He kept his chin up. He kept walking. He kept holding his daughter's hand. They rode the private elevator up to the third floor, a part of the building Raymond had walked past every morning for 11 years, but never actually been inside. The conference room was glass on 3 sides, leather chairs. A table so polished Raymond could see his own tired face in it. "Sit, Lily," Victoria said, pointing to a long leather couch by the window. "There's a bowl of candy on that table. Help yourself. Your father and I are going to have a conversation right over there. We won't be far." Lily looked up at her father. "It's okay, baby. Go on." Lily climbed onto the couch and immediately reached for the candy bowl. Victoria pulled out a chair at the conference table and gestured for Raymond to sit across from her. He sat. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Raymond could hear his own heart hitting the inside of his ribs. "Before we talk about the car," Victoria said, "I owe you an apology, a real one, not the half-hearted thing I gave your daughter." "That's not necessary." "It is necessary, Nelson. It's entirely necessary. I called you a name in front of a child, your child, and in front of my own employees. That was beneath me. It was beneath anyone. I'm sorry." Raymond didn't know what to do with his hands. "Accepted," he said finally. Just like that. "Ma, Victoria, I have a daughter to feed, and a mother who needs her insulin. I don't have time to carry grudges around. I accept your apology, and I'd like to talk about your car." Victoria's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "That's refreshing. That's survival." She let that sit for a second. Then she nodded. "All right, Nelson. Tell me, what's wrong with my grandfather's Ferrari?" Raymond took a breath. "I'd like to ask you a few questions first, if that's all right." "Go ahead." "How often did your grandfather drive it when he had it?" "Every Sunday, rain or shine. He had a route. Up Highway 1 out to Half Moon Bay back home. 42 years the same route." "And did he ever store it for long stretches, winters, anything like that?" "Never. He said a car like that was meant to run, not sit." "Where is it stored now?" A small hesitation. "In my garage in Pacific Heights. It's been sitting most of the last 18 months, obviously, except when it's been here." "And before it came to Titan, how long had it been sitting?" Victoria frowned. "My grandfather passed 3 years ago. The Ferrari sat in his estate garage for about 14 months while we settled the probate. Then it came to me. I drove it maybe twice before the problem started. Raymond nodded slowly. So this engine went from being driven 100 miles a week for 4 decades to sitting still for over a year, to being driven twice to sitting in 6 different repair shops. I suppose so. Victoria, that car's been starving. She blinked. What? An engine like that? A Colombo 512. It's not like a modern car. Modern cars, you can park them for a year, start them up, they'll run. That's because everything in them is rubber and plastic that's designed to last a lifetime. A 1962 Ferrari, though every hose, every line, every gasket in that engine bay was built 64 years ago. Your grandfather kept them alive by running fuel through them every week, for 42 years. The moment he stopped, those parts started dying. The shop has replaced dozens of components. I'm sure they have. What'd they replace? Victoria pulled out her phone, swiped through something, read off a list. Spark plugs, distributor cap, ignition coils, fuel pump, carburetor rebuild, timing chain inspection, valve adjustment, compression test, head gasket replacement. Stop. Raymond held up a hand. Stop right there. Victoria looked up. They did a head gasket replacement on a Ferrari 250 GTO. Is that bad? Victoria, that's like doing open-heart surgery when the patient has a paper cut. Whoever signed off on a head gasket job was either covering for not knowing what was wrong or padding the invoice. Probably both. She stared at him. Go on, she said quietly. They've replaced a lot of big expensive things, and none of them were the problem. Because the problem isn't in any of those systems. Then where is it? Raymond leaned forward. This morning when I drove in, they had the engine running for a warm-up test. I heard it through my open window from 50 yards away. And it had this little hitch. Right at the top of the idle cycle. Not a miss. Not a knock. A hitch. Like it was catching its breath every 3rd or 4th revolution. The technicians have described it as an intermittent stumble. That's a polite word for it. What it actually is, it's a fuel starvation signature. The engine's getting fuel then for just a fraction of a second. It's not getting fuel, then it's getting fuel again. It's the car telling you there's a restriction somewhere in the delivery system. Something soft. Something that collapses under pressure and then opens back up. The fuel pump was replaced. I just told you that. The pump isn't the problem. The problem is between the pump and the carburetor. It's a fuel line. A rubber fuel line that's been sitting in a dark garage for 64 years and hasn't had gasoline running through it consistently for the last 4. When a line like that sits, the inside of it starts to crack. Little hairline cracks on the inner wall. The rubber swells. When pressure builds up, the line collapses on itself, and then when the pressure releases, it opens back up. That's your hitch. That's been your hitch for 18 months. Victoria was very, very still. A fuel line. A $4 piece of reinforced rubber. 6 different master technicians have been looking at everything except the one thing that's wrong. Because nobody replaces fuel lines on a Ferrari 250 GTO Victoria. You don't replace them. The original lines are part of the numbers matching package. They come from the factory. A shop that replaces those lines is a shop that has to tell you they replace them. And then your car loses somewhere between $400,000 and $1 million in value at the next auction. Her face changed. Are you telling me that my technicians left the problem in place because fixing it would lower the resale value? I'm telling you that's possible. I'm also telling you it's possible they genuinely didn't think to look. Rubber fuel lines are not on the diagnostic checklist for this kind of vehicle. Most guys would never think of it. Most guys would spend 18 months doing exactly what your shop has been doing. And you did. I noticed it in 40 seconds. How? Raymond leaned back in his chair. He looked at his daughter across the room eating candy one piece at a time, coloring in her book. Because my father taught me to listen to engines before he taught me to read. Silence. Tell me about your father, Victoria said. Ma'am Victoria, with respect. That's not what we came up here to talk about. Indulge me. Raymond sighed. My father was a mechanic at a garage in West Oakland for 31 years. He worked on everything from Model Ts to fuel-injected Corvettes. He had a third-grade education and a talent that would have taken him anywhere if he'd been born a different color, in a different zip code. He taught me that every engine has a voice, and the job of a good mechanic isn't to look at the engine, it's to hear it. He died of a heart attack when I was 19, right in the middle of rebuilding a transmission, on the shop floor. His last words to me were about a synchro ring. Victoria did not speak. I went to community college for 2 years after that. Automotive technology program. I had plans. I was going to open my own shop. I was going to make my father's name mean something on a sign somewhere. Then I met Sarah, my daughter's mother. We got married young. We had Lily. Sarah got sick. Sarah died. I took the first steady paycheck I could find that came with insurance, and that first steady paycheck was Titan Automotive. I've been here 11 years. I have been promoted exactly 0 times. I have received exactly 3 raises, none of which kept up with inflation. And every morning I show up, and I do my job, and I keep my mouth shut, and I go home, and I feed my daughter, and I take care of my mother, and I wake up, and I do it again. He stopped. I'm sorry. That was more than you asked for. Victoria Ashford looked at him across the conference table. The armor was not cracked anymore. The armor was off. He could see the 38-year-old woman underneath it, and the 38-year-old woman underneath it looked tired. Nelson. Yes, if you walk downstairs right now and you fix that car, and I mean fix it, not patch it, not adjust it, actually fix it, so that it drives the way it drove when my grandfather was alive. What do you want? Raymond's throat closed. What do I want? Yes. Victoria, I just want my job. That's not what I asked. I asked what you want. He didn't answer right away. He looked across the room at his daughter, and he felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been locked for a long time. I want my daughter to go to a better school, he said quietly. I want my mother to have a caregiver during the day, so she's not sitting alone watching game shows when her sugar drops. I want to sleep more than 5 hours a night. I want a shop of my own someday. One with my father's name on it. That's what I want, Victoria. That's what I want, and I know you didn't ask for a list, but you asked, so I'm telling you. She nodded once. All right. All right. Nelson, I'm not going to promise you any of that today. I don't know you yet. For all I know, you're very good at telling a story, and in 2 hours, my Ferrari is going to still be sitting on that lift with a new problem on top of the old one. I have been lied to by master technicians for 18 months. I'm not prepared to hand out gifts based on a confident speech. I understand, but I'm also not prepared to ignore what you just told me. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back downstairs. You are going to examine that fuel line in front of a witness. If you find what you say you're going to find, we are going to proceed from there. If you don't, you are going to go back to the Mercedes you were working on, and we will never speak of this again. Agreed. Agreed. One condition. Name it. I want Preston Whitmore in the room when you do it. Raymond's jaw tightened. Victoria, I'd rather... I know you'd rather. I also know what I'm doing. Preston Whitmore has been billing me $230,000 for 18 months of nothing. If he watches you diagnose this with your bare hands in 45 minutes, I want to see his face. Do you understand? Raymond understood. Yes. Good. She stood. She walked over to the couch. She crouched down next to Lily, and to Raymond's complete astonishment, her voice softened into something he would not have believed she was capable of. Hey, Lily, that's your name, right? Yes. Lily, I'm going to borrow your dad for about an hour. Is that all right with you? There's a lady named Margaret who works on this floor, and she loves kids. Would it be all right if Margaret came and read to you until your dad comes back? Lily looked at her very carefully. Does Margaret have candy too? Margaret has an entire drawer of candy, more than I do. Okay. Victoria stood. She picked up a phone from the conference table. "Margaret, this is Victoria. I have a young lady in the East conference room who needs company for about an hour. Her name is Lily. Bring the good candy." She hung up. She turned to Raymond. "Let's go fix my car." They rode the elevator down in silence. When the doors opened onto the shop floor, every mechanic looked up. Preston was standing near the Ferrari, pretending to examine something on his tablet. The tendons in his neck were standing out like wires. "Preston," Victoria called. Preston turned. His face smoothed instantly into practiced professionalism. "Ms. Ashford, come here. Mr. Nelson is going to show us something." Preston walked over with the careful steps of a man walking toward a cliff. His eyes moved to Raymond. Raymond saw him try to decide which strategy to use. Contempt. Camaraderie. Concern. He settled for something like smug tolerance. "Of course," Preston said. "I'm always happy to watch and learn." "Good," Victoria said. "Because you're going to." Raymond walked to the Ferrari. He put his hand on the hood just for a second, just to steady himself. He could feel his father's voice in his ears. "The engine's talking, son. Your job is to listen." "Preston," Raymond said, and he was pleased to hear that his voice was steady. "I'm going to need the fuel line diagram, the one from the original 1962 service manual, not the reprint, and a flashlight, and a pair of latex gloves so I don't leave handprints on a collector car." Preston hesitated. "The diagram's in my office." "Go get it, please." Preston didn't move. "Preston," Victoria said. Preston went. He came back 4 minutes later with a laminated diagram. Raymond took it without a thank you. He studied it for about 15 seconds. Then he pulled on the gloves, bent over the engine bay, and traced the fuel line with his finger, talking as he went. "Tank is here. Sending unit. Line runs along the frame rail, up over the firewall, comes down here into the pump, out of the pump, into this junction, and then into the float bowls on the 6 individual Weber carburetors. 6 carburetors. 6 fuel lines branching off this main delivery point. These are the original lines. You can tell because the crimping on the fittings matches the 1962 factory specification. Nobody has replaced these in 64 years. "Nelson," Preston said, and there was the first audible crack in his professional voice. "Those lines were inspected. They passed pressure testing. Under static conditions." "Yes." "Preston, a degrading rubber line will pass a static pressure test every single time. The cracks don't open up until the rubber gets hot and soft under sustained engine operation. A 10-minute idle test won't catch it. You'd have to run the engine for 20 minutes minimum in a closed bay at operating temperature with a fuel pressure gauge on the line." "Did anyone do that?" Preston did not answer. "I'm going to take that as a no." Raymond reached in. His fingers found the rubber line that ran from the junction to the second carburetor. He pinched it gently, and he felt it. The soft spot. The give. The place where the inner wall of the line had broken down into something closer to sponge than rubber. His heart kicked. "Preston, give me the diagnostic camera. The small one. The one that goes inside a line." "Nelson, we don't need to—" "Preston." Victoria's voice was quiet. "Give him the camera." Preston walked to a tool cabinet. He came back with a small digital borescope. Raymond took it. He disconnected the fuel line at the carburetor end, 3 minutes 2 wrenches clean. He slid the camera tip into the open line. The screen on the borescope came to life. Raymond turned the screen so Victoria could see it, and so Preston could see it. The inner wall of that fuel line looked like a dry riverbed. Cracks spidered across the surface. In 2 places, the cracks had opened into actual gaps, small enough to pass a pressure test when cold, large enough to collapse when hot. Raymond didn't say anything. He just held the screen up. Victoria looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at Preston. "Preston, what am I looking at?" "Ms. Ashford, that is within normal operational tolerance for a vehicle of this age." "Preston, what am I looking at?" Preston's mouth worked for a second. "That is a degraded fuel line." "Has that line been inspected in the last 18 months? "It was inspected visually." "Visually, from the outside." Yes. Not with this camera, not from the inside. No, Ms. Ashford. Is this the source of the idle hesitation? Preston looked at the floor. It is one possible source. Preston. It is the likely source, Ms. Ashford. And how much would it have cost to inspect this line with the borescope 18 months ago? Ms. Ashford. How much, Preston? Under $100 in labor. And how much have I paid this shop instead? Preston did not answer. $231,416. 18 months. $231,000. For work that did not fix my car, because nobody in 18 months checked the fuel line with a $90 procedure. Ms. Ashford, there were legitimate reasons. Stop talking, Preston. He stopped. Nelson. Yes. Can you replace that line? I can, but not with modern rubber. If you want to maintain the numbers matching integrity of the vehicle, you'll want to source period-correct reinforced rubber lines from a Ferrari Classique specialist. They'll be expensive. $3,000, maybe $4,000 for a complete set plus certified installation. But I can do the installation if you want. I can do it today if we can get the parts overnighted. And the car will run correctly after this. The car will run like your grandfather drove it. Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Preston, I need you to step into my conference room upstairs. Margaret will show you where. I will be up in 20 minutes. We are going to have a conversation about your employment. Preston went pale. Ms. Ashford. Upstairs. Preston. He went. Raymond was aware that every mechanic in the bay was now openly staring. He was also aware that his hands were shaking. Nelson, Victoria said. Yes. Order the parts. Charge them to my personal account. I want you on this car, and only this car, until it runs correctly. I'm authorizing Mr. Callahan to pay you triple time for the duration of this job, and I'm going to need you to stay late tonight if you can arrange childcare. Raymond opened his mouth to say he couldn't afford childcare. Victoria held up a hand. I have already arranged for a car service to take your daughter home, and for a licensed nurse to stay with her and your mother until you return. My assistant is texting you the details now. There is no charge. This is not charity. This is me protecting my investment in the man who is fixing my car. Raymond stared at her. Why, he said. Why what? Why are you doing any of this? An hour ago you were calling me a grease monkey. Victoria Ashford looked at him for a long time. An hour ago, she said. I didn't know what I was looking at. Now I do. And my grandfather raised me to recognize the difference between a man who talks about engines and a man who hears them. My grandfather would be very disappointed in the way I spoke to you this morning, Nelson. I am trying very imperfectly to correct that. Raymond did not know what to say to that. So he said nothing. He just nodded. Once. And he turned back to the Ferrari, and he put his hands on the engine, and he began for the first time in 11 years to do the work that his father had taught him to do. The moment Preston disappeared into the elevator, the shop floor came alive like a kicked beehive. Raymond heard the low murmur of voices behind him, the scrape of tool carts being rolled back into position, the soft clearing of throats. He didn't turn around. He kept his hands on the Ferrari's engine bay, his head down, his focus narrow. Nelson. The voice belonged to Tommy Alvarez. Tommy had been at Titan almost as long as Raymond. 47 years old. 2 bad knees, 3 kids in junior college, and the best set of ears for a misfiring distributor Raymond had ever met. Tommy. You need a hand with those parts. Raymond paused. He looked up. Tommy was standing about 4 feet away, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. His face was carefully neutral, but his eyes were not. I've got it, Tommy. Thank you. Nelson, I'm offering. Raymond looked at him for a moment. 11 years the two of them had worked side by side, and Tommy had never once offered to help with somebody else's job. Why? Raymond said. Tommy's mouth moved slightly. Because I've been listening to that car for 6 months, and I knew something was off in the fuel system. I told Preston 3 separate times. He told me to stick to oil changes. And now I've got to look my wife in the eye on Sunday and explain why I didn't stand up and say something louder. Raymond didn't know what to do with that. Tommy. I'm not asking for anything, Nelson. I'm just saying, If you need hands, you got mine. That's all. Raymond nodded once. I could use a hand with the classique sourcing. The part numbers have to match the numbering on the original fittings. If you've got a contact at the specialty parts warehouse in Los Angeles. Ricky. He owes me a favor. I'll call him right now. Thank you, Tommy. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when that engine's running. Tommy walked off toward the office phone. Raymond watched him go. Another voice behind him. Softer. Nelson. This one was Jimmy Chen. 26 years old. Titan's youngest technician. Smart kid. Quiet kid. The kind of kid Preston loved to humiliate during morning meetings because Jimmy never fought back. Jimmy. Can I watch? Raymond turned. Watch what? While you do the install. I'd like to learn how a proper classique install is supposed to go. Preston never lets me near the big jobs. If today's the only chance I get to see one done the right way, I'd like to take it. Raymond looked at Jimmy. He looked at Tommy across the shop already on the phone, and he understood suddenly what was happening. These men had been waiting. They had been waiting, all of them, for someone to crack the wall. Jimmy, when those parts get here, you're my second hand. You hold the torque wrench. You log every fitting and every reading. You learn. You understand me? Yes, sir. And stop calling me sir. I'm a mechanic same as you. Yes, sir. Raymond almost smiled. The next 2 hours moved fast. Tommy got Ricky on the phone in Los Angeles, who got the Ferrari Classique warehouse on the phone in Maranello, Italy, where a man named Federico, who spoke 4 words of English, got on a different phone with a specialist in Hollywood, who actually had a complete set of 1962 correct fuel lines sitting in a climate-controlled storage unit. The parts were put on a chartered private courier. They would be in San Francisco by 6 o'clock that evening. Raymond, in the meantime, began the preparatory disassembly. Every bolt he loosened, every hose he uncoupled, he documented with a photograph on Jimmy's phone. He numbered every fastener with a paint marker. He laid every small component out on a white cotton cloth in the exact geometric position it had occupied in the engine bay, the way his father had taught him to do on the Oakland garage floor when Raymond was 14 years old. Nelson, Jimmy said at one point, I've never seen anyone work this clean. My father used to say, a messy mechanic is a man who's about to owe somebody an apology. I don't want to owe anybody an apology today. About an hour in the elevator doors opened, and Preston Whitmore walked out of them. The shop went silent. Preston was pale. His collar was open. He was carrying a small cardboard box, and the box was full of his personal items, a framed certificate, a coffee mug, a couple of books. He did not look at anyone. He walked in a straight line from the elevator to the front doors of the service bay, staring directly ahead. Tommy called out from across the shop, Hey, Preston! Preston stopped. He did not turn around. You want your jacket? You left it in the break room. A long pause. Keep it, Tommy. You sure it's a nice jacket? Keep it. Preston started walking again. He made it almost all the way to the doors before Raymond heard him stop a second time. Nelson. Raymond looked up from the engine bay. Preston was standing at the doors, his back still turned, his shoulders tight. Yes, Preston. You think you've won something today, don't you? Raymond wiped his hands on a rag. He took his time. Preston, I don't even know what the game was. The game, Preston said, still not turning around, was that there are rules about how this industry works. Rules about who gets to touch the expensive cars and who doesn't. Rules about who belongs in which room. You think you just broke one of those rules today. You think you're going to get a promotion and a pat on the head and everybody's going to clap. But I'm going to tell you something, Nelson. I've been in this industry for 9 years. I know everybody. I know the owners at Scuderia West. I know the service director at Ferrari of San Francisco. I know the lead technicians at the 3 biggest collector car dealerships in Northern California. And by Monday morning, every single one of them is going to know your name, and not in the way you want them to. Raymond put down the rag. Preston, he said, I appreciate the warning, But you want to know something? I've been working on cars since I was 14 years old. I've worked on engines my father rebuilt. I've worked on engines my grandfather rebuilt. I know a lot of mechanics too. None of them run in the same circles you run in because none of them were born into the families you were born into. But I'll tell you what every one of them knows. Every one of them knows that a rubber fuel line goes bad when it sits. Every one of them would have found this problem in 45 minutes. You're not mad at me because I broke a rule today. You're mad at me because I did a job you couldn't do, and I did it in front of the woman who was paying you to do it. That's the whole thing, Preston. That's the entire thing. Preston's shoulders were shaking now. You're going to regret this, Nelson. I've been regretting this for 11 years, Preston. The only thing I regret today is that I waited so long to speak up. Preston walked out the doors. The silence after he left was different from the silence before. Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Tommy started clapping. Just once slow. Then Jimmy joined in. Then 4 other mechanics in the bay. Raymond felt heat climb up his neck. "All right," he said. "All right, fellas. Back to work. I've got a fuel line to install in about 3 hours, and I've still got a valve cover to clean." But the applause kept going for about 5 more seconds. Raymond kept his head down. His eyes were burning, and he was not going to let anybody see it. At 4:45, his phone buzzed. It was a text message from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Maria Santos, RN. I'm at your home with Lily and Mrs. Nelson. Everything is fine here. Your mother's blood sugar is stable. She had a snack. She is watching Jeopardy. Lily is doing her homework and has requested spaghetti for dinner. Please take your time. I am on until midnight." Raymond read it 3 times. He sat down on an overturned milk crate and pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "Nelson?" Jimmy's voice gentle. "I'm all right." "You sure?" "I'm all right, Jimmy. Just give me a second." He sat there for about 40 seconds, breathing through his nose, trying to hold himself together. It was the strangest thing. He could face down Preston Whitmore without flinching. He could stand in front of Victoria Ashford and explain a fuel starvation signature. But a stranger named Maria Santos was sitting in his living room, making spaghetti for his daughter, and it was almost breaking him. Because he had not in 3 years since Sarah had died accepted help from a single person. Not his neighbors, not his church, not his mother's old friends who still called once a month. He had said no to all of them every time, because saying yes felt like admitting he couldn't do it alone. And if he admitted he couldn't do it alone, he was afraid the whole thing was going to fall apart. And now a woman he had never met was feeding his daughter spaghetti. "Nelson." He looked up. Victoria was standing about 6 feet away. She had come down while he wasn't looking. "Everything all right?" Yes, everything's fine. I just got a message from the nurse." "Ah, Maria is wonderful. She works for a concierge care service I use occasionally for my own father. He has Parkinson's. He lives in Sausalito." Raymond stood up. "Victoria, I don't know how to thank you for this." "Nelson, stop. You can thank me by finishing the car. How's the install coming?" "Parts are in transit. Should be here by 6. I'll do the install through the evening. If everything goes right, I'll be able to run a full operating temperature test tomorrow morning." "Good." She paused. "There's something I need to tell you." "Yes." Preston made a phone call on his way out of the building. "My security team monitors outgoing calls from our facilities, and I took the liberty of having them check." He called a journalist, a man named Derek Hollis, who writes a column for a national automotive magazine. Raymond felt something drop. "What did he tell him?" "He told him," Victoria said carefully, "that I had fired him and replaced him with an unqualified tech from the back of the shop, and that this unqualified tech was now without any professional certification or supervision performing a restoration on a $12 million collector vehicle." He suggested the journalist might want to cover the story, particularly the part where the unqualified tech damages the car beyond repair. "Victoria, Derek Hollis is going to call me in about an hour. I am going to confirm that yes, you are working on my car, and I am going to do it in a way that makes this a very large story. Raymond's stomach nodded. Victoria, I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because if something goes wrong during the install, if a fitting doesn't seat, if there's a secondary issue I couldn't see from the outside, and the world is watching, then I don't just lose my job. I lose my reputation in a field I could never work in again. I have a daughter, Victoria. I have a mother. I cannot be a man who failed publicly. Victoria listened to him. When he was done, she nodded once. All right, counter-proposal. Go ahead. Preston doesn't know that I know about the phone call. Derek Hollis is going to call me, and I am going to tell him that the story is not what he was told. I am going to tell him that I have engaged a highly qualified specialist on the recommendation of an outside consultant, and that the work is being performed tomorrow morning in a controlled environment with full documentation. I am going to invite Derek and 2 other journalists of my choosing, and 3 independent certified Ferrari Classique evaluators from the Ferrari North America offices in Englewood Cliffs to be present for the test run and the evaluation. Victoria, hear me out. If this works, if you run that car at operating temperature for a sustained period in front of 3 certified Ferrari Classique evaluators, and it runs correctly, then the story is not that an unqualified mechanic destroyed a $12 million car. The story is that an outside specialist diagnosed in 45 minutes what 6 certified shops couldn't find in 18 months. That is a story that rearranges your entire professional future, Nelson. It also, not incidentally, rearranges Preston Whitmore's entire professional future in the opposite direction. Raymond took a long breath. And if it doesn't work? If it doesn't work, I lose a Ferrari, and I pay every one of those evaluators' travel expenses, and I absorb the bad press, and you go back to your Mercedes. I absorb all of the downside. You absorb none of it. That's not fair to you, Nelson. I have been running a billion-dollar company for 11 years. I have calculated risk on every deal I have ever closed. I am calculating this one. I would not be making this offer if I did not think the probability of success was very high. Do you trust your diagnosis? Yes. Do you trust your installation skills? Yes. Then we move forward. Raymond nodded. All right, we move forward. Good. One more thing. The evaluators are going to arrive tomorrow morning at 9. I would like you to be in the shop by 7:30 in clean coveralls. I'm having a set delivered to your home tonight. Maria will receive them. Victoria, I don't need. Nelson, the coveralls are not a gift. They are a uniform. You are representing my car and my diagnosis. I need you to look like what you are, which is a master technician. Not what Preston reduced you to in the press release he's already probably drafting. Do you understand? Yes. Good. I'll see you at 7:30. She started to walk away. Victoria. She turned. Yes. Thank you. She looked at him for a long moment. Don't thank me tomorrow, Nelson. Just fix the car. She left. The parts arrived at 6:14 that evening, brought in by a uniformed courier who required 2 signatures and a biometric scan. The cardboard box was wrapped in acid-free tissue paper. Inside were the most beautiful pieces of period-correct reinforced rubber fuel line Raymond had ever seen, each fitting individually wrapped, each assembly tagged with a Ferrari Classique certification number handwritten in blue ink. Raymond whistled. Jimmy, come here. Jimmy came over. This, Raymond said, holding up one of the assemblies, is what a correct part looks like. Not a modern replica, not a reproduction. This is the real thing. Made to the original 1962 specifications with modern quality control. Every fitting on this line has been pressure tested to 200 psi. Every crimp is hand-rolled. You're going to remember this night for the rest of your career, Jimmy. You're going to tell your kids about it someday. I believe you, Nelson. Let's get to work. They worked through the evening. Raymond ran the lines with the patience of a man building a ship in a bottle. Every fitting was torqued to exact specification. Every clamp was positioned so that its worm gear faced outward for future inspection. Every bend in the line was radius to factory tolerance. Jimmy stood beside him, holding the torque wrench, logging every number, handing him the next tool before he had to ask. At around 9 o'clock, Tommy came over with 3 cups of coffee. "You fellas taking a break?" "10 minutes," Raymond said. They sat on the milk crates. Tommy handed out the coffee. "Nelson, I've got to ask you something." "Go ahead." "What are you going to do tomorrow after you fix this car?" Raymond took a sip of coffee. "I don't know, Tommy. I don't know. I'm trying not to think about tomorrow. I'm trying to think about tonight. I'll tell you what I think you should do." "What's that?" "I think whatever Ms. Ashford offers you tomorrow, you take it. And I think when you land on your feet, you remember this shop. I'm not talking about hiring me. I'm too old to learn new tricks. But I've got a kid. He's 22. He's at the community college trying to get into automotive tech. He's got good hands, Nelson. Good ears, too. And if you end up in a position someday where you can give a kid like that a chance, the way nobody gave you a chance until this afternoon, I'd appreciate it." Raymond looked at him. "Tommy, if tomorrow goes the way I hope it does, your son has a job. You have my word." Tommy nodded. He didn't say thank you. He just nodded. He got up. He went back to his bay. Raymond and Jimmy worked until 11:45. The last fitting was torqued into place. Every line was seated. Every clamp was secure. Raymond walked around the engine bay twice, his eyes moving over every connection, every component. He checked his work against the diagram. He checked it against Jimmy's log. He checked it against the photograph he had taken at the beginning of the process. Everything was correct. "Jimmy." "Yes, Nelson." "Go home. Get some sleep. Be back here at 7. "I was going to stay and keep watch on the car. I know you were. But you're going to be more useful to me tomorrow if you can see straight. Go home. I'll set the alarm myself." Jimmy hesitated. "Nelson, for whatever it's worth, I've worked in 3 shops before this one. I've never seen anyone do what you did today. I just wanted to say that." "Go home, Jimmy." Jimmy went. Raymond stood alone in the bay for a long moment looking at the Ferrari. Its hood was closed. Its wheels were clean. Its paint gleamed under the shop lights. For the first time in 18 months, it looked like a car that was ready to run. He put his hand on the hood. "Mr. Ashford," he said quietly to a man he had never met, a grandfather of a woman he barely knew, a man who had driven this machine up Highway 1 every Sunday for 42 years. "I'm going to do my best for your car tomorrow. I promise you that." He turned out the lights. He drove home in his pickup through the empty streets of the Mission District. When he walked in through his own front door, just after midnight, a woman he had never met stood up from his couch, smiled at him, and said, "Mr. Nelson, I'm Maria. Your daughter is asleep. Your mother is asleep. There is spaghetti in the refrigerator. You should eat. You have a big morning." Raymond stood in his own living room for a long moment. Then he said, "Maria, I don't know how to let somebody else take care of my family." Maria looked at him. "Mr. Nelson, you're not letting me take care of them. You're letting them be taken care of. There is a difference." Raymond sat down on his couch. And for the first time since his wife had died 3 years and 4 months ago, he put his face in his hands, and he let himself cry. Quietly, so he would not wake his daughter. And Maria Santos, RN, a woman he had met 90 seconds ago, sat down on the other end of the couch, and she did not say anything at all. She just let him cry. Raymond slept 4 hours. He was up before the alarm. The house was quiet. Maria had gone home around 1 in the morning after he had pulled himself together and apologized twice, and eaten the spaghetti that she would not let him refuse. His mother was snoring softly down the hall. Lily was curled up in her bed with her rabbit, one small foot sticking out from under the blanket. He stood in her doorway for a long time. "Daddy." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Go back to sleep, baby." "Are you going to work?" "Yes." "Is today the day?" He came in. He sat on the edge of her bed. He pushed her curls back from her forehead. "What day, sweetheart?" "The day you fix the lady's car." "Yes, today's the day." "Daddy." Yes. Don't be scared. Raymond swallowed. I'm not scared, baby. You are a little. I can tell. Your eyes do a thing when you're scared. What thing? They get too wide. He laughed softly. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. I'll be okay, Lily. I promise. Daddy? Yes. When you fix the car, are we going to have more money? He paused. I don't know, baby. I hope so. If we have more money, can we get Grandma a wheelchair with the wheels that don't squeak? Yes, that's the first thing we'll buy. Good. She rolled over and closed her eyes. Raymond sat there for another minute, listening to her breathing settle back into sleep. Then he got up. He put on the coveralls Maria had laid out on a chair for him, dark navy, brand new stiff, with the newness of them, a small Ferrari Classique patch stitched onto the left breast, and he drove to Titan Automotive in the dark. He got there at 6:45. The lot was already lit. 2 black SUVs were parked near the front doors, and a third one was pulling in behind him as he killed the engine. Raymond watched 3 men and 1 woman step out of the SUVs, all of them in suits, all of them carrying aluminum cases, all of them with the unhurried confidence of people who had flown in on someone else's dime. The Ferrari Classique evaluators. Raymond took a long breath. He got out of his truck. A tall man in his 60s with silver hair and round wire-rimmed glasses walked up to him with his hand extended. Mr. Nelson. Yes, Enzo Ricci. I'm the lead evaluator from Ferrari North America. These are my colleagues, Ms. Pellegrini, Mr. Hoffman, and Mr. Lazar. Ms. Ashford has briefed us on the situation. I must tell you, Mr. Nelson, before we begin anything else, that I have been doing Ferrari Classique certifications for 31 years. I have seen many mechanics attempt work on vehicles of this caliber. Most of them I can tell within 90 seconds whether they know what they are doing. Raymond held the man's eyes. And Enzo Ricci smiled. It was the smile of a man who had been enjoying himself all morning already. Ms. Ashford sent me your photographic documentation of the disassembly last night. Every bolt, every clamp, every fitting numbered positioned, photographed in sequence. In 31 years, Mr. Nelson, I have seen that level of documentation perhaps 4 times. All 4 of those times the mechanic was a master at the very top of his field. So, my 90 seconds are up. Let us go see your car. Raymond followed them inside. The shop was already full. Every technician was there, all of them in clean coveralls, all of them at their stations pretending to be busy. Tommy was polishing a wrench. Jimmy was reorganizing a drawer of sockets for the 3rd time. Nobody was looking at the Ferrari. Everybody was looking at the Ferrari. Victoria was standing near the lift talking to 3 people in press credentials. She turned when the doors opened. Her eyes went to Raymond. She looked him up and down in the coveralls. She nodded once. Approval. Good morning, Nelson. Good morning, Victoria. Our guests have arrived, I see. Mr. Ricci, thank you for coming. Shall we get started? I would like to begin with a cold inspection, Mr. Ricci said, before any attempt is made to start the engine. I want to see the installation, the fittings, the torque values. If the work is not correct, there is no reason to run the engine. Of course, Victoria said. Nelson, would you walk Mr. Ricci through the installation? Raymond walked to the Ferrari. He opened the hood. And he did something he had not rehearsed, because he had not known he was going to do it until the moment arrived. He reached into his back pocket, and he pulled out a small leather notebook that had belonged to his father. The cover was cracked. The binding was held together with black electrical tape. He opened it to a page he had filled in at 11:45 the night before, in his own careful block lettering. Mr. Ricci, I documented every step of the install last night. Torque values, fitting orientations, clamp positions, and line routings. If you'll follow along, I'll walk you through it. Mr. Ricci took the notebook. He looked at the page. He looked at the engine bay. He looked at the page again. Then he looked at Raymond, and something in his face softened. Mr. Nelson, may I ask whose notebook this is? It was my father's. Your father was a mechanic. For 31 years. He taught you to work like this. He taught me everything, Mr. Ricci. Mr. Ricci nodded slowly. He turned back to the engine bay. And then for 45 minutes, he went over every fitting on the fuel delivery system with a torque calibration wrench, a borescope, and a digital pressure gauge. His 3 colleagues took turns looking over his shoulder. Ms. Pellegrini photographed each connection from multiple angles. Mr. Hoffman took notes on a tablet. Mr. Lazar, who had not yet spoken a word, simply watched, his arms crossed, his eyes narrow. Raymond stood behind them with his hands clasped in front of him. He did not move. He did not speak unless he was asked. He had learned a long time ago that the best thing a mechanic could do during an evaluation was to disappear. After 45 minutes, Mr. Ricci turned around. "Mr. Nelson?" "Yes?" "The installation is perfect." Raymond's chest moved very slightly. "Not merely adequate." Mr. Ricci continued loudly enough that the entire shop could hear him. "Perfect. Every torque value is within 1 Newton-meter of factory specification. Every line is radiused correctly. Every clamp is positioned for future inspection. The period-correct fittings have been seated without a single scratch on the original fasteners. In my professional opinion, this installation would pass a full Ferrari Classique certification audit today right now, with no remediation required." Tommy from across the shop let out a low whistle. "Let us start the engine," Mr. Ricci said. Raymond walked to the driver's side door. He opened it with the reverence of a man opening a family Bible. He sat down in the cracked leather seat. He put his hand on the key. "Mr. Ricci, for the record, when I turn this key, we are going to hear the fuel pump prime for approximately 4 seconds before the engine engages. That is normal for this vehicle." "Understood. And when the engine catches, we are going to hear a slight roughness for the first 15 to 20 seconds while the new fuel lines bleed of any trapped air. That is also normal." "Understood. After 20 seconds, if my diagnosis is correct, the engine will smooth out to a steady idle. At the 2-minute mark, I will bring it up to 2000 RPM and hold it for 60 seconds. If the fuel starvation signature is gone, we'll hear a clean, steady rever. If the signature is still present, we'll hear the hitch." "Understood. Proceed when you are ready, Mr. Nelson." Raymond turned the key. The fuel pump primed. 1 second, 2, 3, 4. He turned the key further. The engine caught. The V12 roared to life in the confined space of the shop, 12 cylinders, firing in their ancient perfect sequence. For the first 15 seconds, as predicted, there was a slight roughness, small gasps of air bleeding out through the new lines. Raymond kept his right foot feathered on the throttle, giving the engine just enough to breathe without drowning it. At 18 seconds, the roughness cleared. The idle smoothed out. It became the cleanest, most perfectly pitched Ferrari Phi 12 idle Raymond had ever heard in his entire life. Mr. Ricci closed his eyes. His face did something that Raymond later would describe to his daughter as the face of a man listening to his favorite piece of music for the first time in many years. The idle held, and held, and held. At the 2-minute mark, Raymond brought the throttle up. 2,000 revolutions per minute. Clean, smooth, zero hesitation, zero hitch. The engine sang the way engines sang when the men who made them were still alive. He held it for 60 seconds. He brought it back down to idle. The idle was still perfect. He shut the engine off. The shop was silent for about 3 seconds. Then somebody in the back. Raymond never did find out who started clapping. And then everybody was clapping. Tommy was clapping. Jimmy was clapping. The journalists were clapping. Mr. Ricci was clapping. Even Mr. Lazar, the silent one, was clapping, his narrow eyes now very wide. Victoria was not clapping. Victoria was crying. She was standing about 10 feet from the car, one hand pressed flat against her mouth, tears running down her face without sound. Raymond got out of the driver's seat slowly. He closed the door with the same reverence he had opened it with. He walked toward her. "Victoria." She shook her head. She could not speak. "Victoria, I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Don't apologize, Nelson." Her voice was thick. "Don't you dare apologize. That is the sound of my grandfather's car. That is the sound of Sunday mornings on Highway 1 when I was 9 years old. I have not heard that sound in 7 years. I'm glad." You gave that back to me. I gave it back to your car. Your grandfather gave it to you. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, and she turned to the journalists, and she put the armor back on. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed a diagnosis and repair that 6 certified master technicians were unable to complete in 18 months. You have witnessed it performed by a man who has been working at this facility for 11 years without a promotion because the men above him did not see what was in front of their eyes. Mr. Ricci, I would like your professional statement for the record. Mr. Ricci stepped forward. My professional statement for the record is that Mr. Raymond Nelson performed a diagnosis that should have been the first test any qualified technician performed on this vehicle 18 months ago. His repair is flawless. His documentation is immaculate. And based on what I have seen today, I am prepared to recommend him personally for the Ferrari North America Master Technician Certification Program on the full scholarship track, effective immediately. That recommendation is extremely rare. It has been offered 3 times in the past 10 years. Raymond felt the floor move slightly under him. Mr. Ricci, he said. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Mr. Nelson. Raymond hesitated. Mr. Ricci, I would be honored. But I have to ask. The program, where is it held? Maranello, Italy. The program is 6 months. Raymond's throat closed. Mr. Ricci, I have a 7-year-old daughter and a mother who is recovering from a stroke. I cannot leave them for 6 months. I'm sorry. I have to decline. The shop went quiet. Mr. Ricci looked at Raymond with something that was not disappointment. It was, if anything, respect. He was about to speak when Victoria Ashford stepped forward. Mr. Ricci, may I propose an alternative? Please. Ferrari North America has a satellite training facility in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. I happen to know this because my company has a satellite office across the street from it. Is it possible for the program to be conducted at the Englewood Cliffs facility rather than at Maranello? Ms. Ashford, the Englewood Cliffs facility does not typically host the full master certification program. Mr. Ricci, I am going to donate $2 million to the Ferrari North America Educational Foundation this morning contingent on the Englewood Cliffs facility hosting Mr. Nelson's program. I am also going to arrange for Mr. Nelson's daughter and mother to be relocated to New Jersey for the duration of the program at my personal expense in a home with full-time medical staff for his mother and a private school admission for his daughter. Mr. Nelson will not be separated from his family for a single day. Is that an acceptable arrangement? Mr. Ricci looked at her. Then he looked at Raymond. Mr. Nelson, would such an arrangement be acceptable to you? Raymond could not speak. He looked at Victoria. He looked at Mr. Ricci. He looked at Tommy and Jimmy standing in the back of the shop, their faces open and waiting. He looked finally at the Ferrari silver blue and perfect the chrome catching the shop lights. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, that would be acceptable. Then the arrangement is made, Mr. Ricci said. Victoria turned to the journalists. Derek Hollis, front and center. You were told a story yesterday evening, I believe by a man named Preston Whitmore. You were told that an unqualified mechanic had been handed a $12 million vehicle. What you have actually witnessed is Mr. Raymond Nelson, who has been the most qualified mechanic in this building for 11 years, and whose qualifications were ignored because he did not attend the right schools or come from the right families. I would like you to write that story. I would like you to write it truthfully. And I would like you to use Preston Whitmore's name because his name needs to appear in a major publication associated with professional fraud. I have his invoicing records for 18 months of work that did nothing. I will provide them to you after this event. Derek Hollis, the journalist, was writing so fast his pen was shaking. Ms. Ashford, is there a quote from you I can use? Yes, Victoria said. You can write this. Mr. Nelson was called a grease monkey by me yesterday morning. By me personally. In front of his 7-year-old daughter. It was the worst thing I have said to another human being in many years. I would like to take this opportunity to state publicly that Mr. Nelson is one of the finest mechanics working in this country today, and that I was deeply wrong, and that I am grateful beyond measure that his daughter corrected me before the damage became irreversible." Derek Hollis stopped writing. "Ms. Ashford, you want me to publish that you called him a grease monkey?" "Yes, publish all of it. If I'm going to be the villain of this story for the first 2 paragraphs, let me earn the redemption in the 3rd. Raymond tried to say something. His mouth would not cooperate. Victoria turned to him one last time. "Nelson, go home. Get your daughter. Get your mother. Come back here at 1 o'clock. I'm going to want to have lunch with all 3 of you. We have arrangements to make." "Victoria, go." He went. He drove home in a daze. When he walked through the front door, his mother was sitting at the kitchen table drinking her morning coffee. Lily was on the floor doing a puzzle. "Raymond." His mother's voice was sharp with alarm. "What are you doing home? Are you sick?" "No, Mama." "Did they fire you?" "No." "Then what?" Raymond sat down at the table across from her. He took her good hand in both of his. He looked at his daughter on the floor. "Lily, come here." Lily came. She climbed into his lap. "Baby, Mama, I need to tell you something, and I need you both to stay calm because it's a big thing. And if I don't say it all at once, I might not be able to finish." "Raymond, you're scaring me." "Mama, today about 40 minutes ago, I fixed Ms. Ashford's Ferrari. And because I fixed it, Ferrari itself is going to send me to a master training program in New Jersey for 6 months. Ms. Ashford is going to pay for you and Lily to come with me. There's going to be a nurse for you, Mama. Full time. And Lily is going to go to a private school. And I'm going to be a certified master technician when I come back, which means I'm going to be able to open my own shop, Mama. My own shop, with Daddy's name on it." His mother's face did not move for a long moment. Then his mother, who had not cried in front of him since his father's funeral 16 years ago, began to cry. "Your father," she said. "Your father always said. He always said you had hands better than his. He said you were going to put his name on a sign somewhere. He said it, Raymond. He said it to me the night before he died." "I know, Mama." "He said our boy is going to be somebody." Raymond held her hand. "He was right, Mama." Lily, who had been very quiet, tugged on his coveralls. "Daddy." "Yes, baby." "Does New Jersey have candy?" Raymond laughed. It came out half like a sob. "Yes, baby. New Jersey has candy." "Okay, then I'm ready to go." Raymond held his daughter against his chest. He held his mother's hand across the table. He looked out the window of the little duplex in the Mission District that he had rented for 11 years, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, he did not see a place he was trapped in. He saw a place he was leaving. His father's voice was in his ears. "The engine's talking, son. Your job is to listen." And for the first time in 11 years, Raymond Nelson had listened, and the engine had answered, and the engine had told him that he was going to be all right. At 1 o'clock sharp, Raymond walked back into Titan Automotive with his mother on one arm and his daughter holding the other hand. Dorothy had put on the blue dress she had not worn since her sister's funeral 4 years ago. Lily had chosen her own outfit, which was a pink t-shirt, a purple tutu, and a pair of light-up sneakers that blinked every time she took a step. Raymond had tried to suggest something more formal. Lily had informed him that a lady who owned a Ferrari would appreciate sparkle. Victoria was waiting for them at the front doors. "Mrs. Nelson," she said, stepping forward and taking Dorothy's hand with both of hers. "I am Victoria Ashford. Your son saved my grandfather's car this morning, and then he explained to me very politely that the car would not have been saved if you had not raised him to be the man he is. I have been looking forward to meeting you all morning." Dorothy's good hand tightened on Victoria's. "Miss Ashford, my son tells me you have been very kind to him." "Mrs. Nelson, your son tells a great many truths. That one is at best a partial truth. I was cruel to him yesterday morning. I would like to spend the rest of the afternoon trying to earn something closer to the description he is giving you." "You don't have to earn anything from me, dear. My son has already forgiven you. That means I have too." Victoria's composure faltered for just a second. She blinked twice. "Thank you, Mrs. Nelson. Let me show you to lunch." She had arranged a small private room on the third floor, the same floor where the conference room had been yesterday. The table was set for 4. There was a high chair at one place until Lily announced that she was 7 years old and high chairs were for babies, and the staff swapped it for a cushion on a regular chair without a word. Raymond barely ate. His mother, who normally picked at food, ate a full plate of salmon and 2 dinner rolls and asked for seconds on the mashed potatoes. Lily ate only macaroni and cheese, which Victoria had apparently called ahead about. Victoria herself mostly watched her eyes moving between the 3 of them, taking in something Raymond could not quite read. Halfway through the meal, she put down her fork. "Nelson, there is something I need to tell you. I wanted to wait until your family was here, because it concerns all of you." "Go ahead." "Preston Whitmore was arrested 2 hours ago." Raymond stopped chewing. "Arrested? After you left this morning, I turned over his 18-month invoicing records to my corporate counsel. They spent 3 hours with a forensic accountant. They found that Mr. Whitmore has been, for approximately 4 years, systematically inflating labor hours and parts costs on collector vehicles owned by clients who he believed would not notice. My Ferrari was one of at least 14 such vehicles. The fraudulent billing across all clients totals somewhere above $4 million. Raymond set down his fork. $4 million. The FBI was interested. The San Francisco District Attorney's Office was also interested. Mr. Whitmore is currently, I believe, in a small room answering questions about a number of things. His license to perform certified work on Ferrari Classica vehicles has already been revoked by Ferrari North America on Mr. Ricci's direct recommendation. He will never work in this industry again. And if the fraud charges land the way my counsel expects they will, he will spend somewhere between 3 and 7 years as a guest of the federal government. Victoria, Raymond said quietly. "Yes. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted to fix a car." "I know you didn't, Nelson. But Preston Whitmore stole $4 million from people who trusted him. That is not your doing. That is his. You just happened to be the man standing there when the truth came out." Dorothy, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Ms. Ashford, my husband used to say something. He said that the world sorts itself out eventually. Slow, but eventual. He said the only thing a man has to do is keep his own hands clean and wait." Victoria looked at Dorothy for a long moment. "Mrs. Nelson, your husband sounds like he was a remarkable man." "He was, dear. He was." They finished the meal. Victoria walked them back down to the shop floor, where the Ferrari was now back under its white cloth, waiting to be driven home to Pacific Heights. Raymond paused next to it. He put his hand on the cloth one last time, just over the hood. "Goodbye, old girl," he said quietly. "Nelson." Victoria was standing behind him. "Yes. I have something else for you. Come with me." She walked him over to the office area. His locker was there. The same metal locker he had used for 11 years, the one with the dent in the corner from when a hydraulic jack had fallen on it in 2019. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Open it." He opened it. Inside was a check, made out to Raymond Nelson, in the amount of $231,416. Raymond stared at it. "Victoria, that," she said, "is exactly the amount that Preston Whitmore billed me for 18 months of fraudulent labor. The money was recovered this morning from a frozen escrow account that he apparently did not know I had a lien on. I have no use for it. It was extracted from me under false pretenses. And I cannot think of a single person on this earth more deserving of it than the man who actually did the job." Raymond's hands were shaking. He tried to hand the envelope back. "Victoria, I can't take this." "You can, and you will not argue with me in front of my chief of staff who is watching from the window. Nelson, this is not charity. This is restitution. Money that was taken in bad faith returned in good faith to the man who earned it. It belongs to you. Accept it." "It's too much." "It's exactly the right amount." Raymond looked at his daughter. Lily had already wandered off to look at a bright red Alfa Romeo on the other side of the showroom. His mother was sitting in a chair near the door. Her eyes closed, a small smile on her face. He thought about the squeaky wheelchair. He thought about the insulin copays. He thought about the college fund for Lily that he had never in 7 years been able to open. He put the envelope in his coverall pocket. "Victoria, I'm going to say thank you, and then I'm never going to mention this again. Is that all right with you?" "That is perfectly all right with me, Nelson. Thank you." He drove his family home. He made dinner. He put Lily to bed. He helped his mother with her insulin. And after everyone was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table under the single bulb overhead, and he opened the envelope, and he looked at the check one more time, and he cried quietly the way he had cried the night before on the couch next to Maria. He cried because his wife was not there to see it. He cried because his father was not there to see it. And he cried because, for the first time since he was 19 years old, he had a future that was wider than the next paycheck. The story ran in Derek Hollis's column 4 days later. It ran on the front page of the automotive section and was picked up within 24 hours by 3 national news outlets and 2 morning television programs. The headline read, "The mechanic they called a grease monkey." Victoria Ashford's quote appeared in the 3rd paragraph exactly as she had dictated it, her public admission of wrongdoing printed in bold. Preston Whitmore's name appeared in the 6th paragraph. Alongside the word fraud and the phrase federal indictment, Raymond's name appeared in the headline. His phone did not stop ringing for 10 days. 3 different Ferrari specialty shops called to offer him positions. 2 Porsche dealerships called. A collector in Atherton called to offer him a salary of $450,000 a year to be the personal technician for a private collection of 23 vintage European sports cars. Raymond turned every one of them down politely with the same explanation. He was honored. He was grateful. But he had already committed to a 6-month training program in New Jersey, and he was going to keep that commitment. 2 weeks after the story ran, Raymond, Dorothy, and Lily boarded a private flight to Newark Liberty International Airport. Victoria had arranged it. She had also arranged the car that picked them up at the terminal and the 3-bedroom house in Englewood Cliffs with the ramp already built onto the front porch, and the private day nurse who was waiting at the house with a key and a fresh pot of coffee and a pediatric copy of Charlotte's Web for Lily, because Victoria had remembered, from a single conversation 3 weeks earlier, that Lily had mentioned it was the book they were starting in class. The program at Ferrari North America was the most demanding 6 months of Raymond's life. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Classroom instruction in the morning, hands-on work in the afternoons, written examinations every Friday. The curriculum covered Ferrari history, metallurgy period, correct restoration techniques, electrical systems, carburetor, rebuilding transmission tuning, and Ferrari Classique certification standards. Raymond absorbed it all. He sat in the front row of every lecture. He asked questions other students were afraid to ask. He worked late, alone in the training garage, long after the other students had gone home for the night. And when Dorothy asked him one evening in the kitchen of the little house in Englewood Cliffs why he was pushing himself so hard, he gave her the only answer he had. "Mama, this is my one chance. I'm not going to waste a single hour of it." Lily adored the private school. She came home every afternoon with stories about her new friends, her reading teacher, the art room, the garden where they grew actual vegetables. By the 3rd month, she was reading 2 grade levels ahead. By the 5th month, she had announced that she wanted to be a mechanic when she grew up, and also a dentist, and also maybe a ballerina, and she was still considering the order of these professions. Dorothy, to everyone's surprise, began to get stronger. The full-time nurse insisted on 20 minutes of physical therapy every morning. The house was warm. The air was clean. The food was fresh. Dorothy's blood sugar stabilized. Her left hand, which had been limp for 2 years, began to close around a coffee cup. By the 4th month, she was walking from the kitchen to the living room without her cane. Raymond graduated from the Ferrari North America Master Technician Certification Program on a Saturday in October. He was one of 4 graduates. Mr. Enzo Ricci flew in from Maranello to hand him the certificate personally. Victoria flew in from San Francisco. Tommy Alvarez and Jimmy Chen and Jimmy's tearful mother drove up from Fresno where Tommy's brother lived. And a tall, thin young man with good hands and serious eyes, Tommy's son Marcus, sat in the back row and watched Raymond receive his certificate and did not blink the entire time. After the ceremony, Raymond walked over to Marcus Alvarez, and he put out his hand. "Marcus, Mr. Nelson. You're looking for an apprenticeship, is what your father tells me." "Yes, sir. I'm looking for an apprentice, starting in about 3 weeks." Marcus's mouth opened. He did not for a moment appear to be able to close it. "Mr. Nelson, are you serious?" "Marcus, I made your father a promise 8 months ago in a shop in San Francisco. I keep my promises. If you want the job, it's yours." "Yes, sir, I want the job." "Good. Show up on November 3rd. I'll text your father the address." Raymond moved his family back to the Bay Area the following week. Victoria had one more surprise for him. She had used a small portion of the money she would have paid Preston's shop over the coming years, and she had purchased outright a 2-bay garage on a quiet commercial street in West Oakland, 3 miles from the house Raymond's father had owned. She handed him the keys in front of it. "Nelson, I'm not giving this to you. I'm leasing it to you. For $1 a year. For as long as you want it." Raymond looked at the building. It was a simple cinder-block structure painted beige with 2 roll-up doors and a small office in front. It needed new signage. It needed a coat of paint. It needed the grease and tools and noise of a working shop. "Victoria, I don't know how to thank you for any of this. Any of it. The program, the house, this. Nelson, stop thanking me. I have thanked you in material form for what you did for me and for my grandfather's memory. I will not be apologized to for that. Now, what are you going to name the place?" Raymond stood in front of the building for a long moment. "Henry Nelson and Son." "Your father?" "Yes. That's a good name." He opened Henry Nelson and Son on a rainy Monday morning in December. Marcus was his first apprentice. Jimmy Chen, who had quit Titan 2 weeks after Raymond left, came on board as the second mechanic. Tommy's older brother, who had done bodywork in Fresno for 30 years, came up on the weekends to help with paint jobs. The sign over the door, hand-painted by a local artist who had lost his own father to a stroke in his 50s, read Henry Nelson and Son. Since 1968 in spirit, since 2026 in practice. Lily came to the shop every Saturday. She had her own small set of tools. She had her own small pair of coveralls. She had, by the time she turned 8, the ability to identify a bad spark plug by listening to an engine for about 20 seconds, at which point Raymond would look at his mother across the shop floor, and his mother would look back at him, and both of them would think about Henry Nelson, and neither of them would need to say his name out loud. Dorothy, at 69, began to walk without her cane entirely. She answered the shop phone. She kept the books. She yelled at customers who tried to haggle with her son. She was by every measure that mattered alive again. The Ferrari 250 GTO, Victoria's grandfather's car, came in for its annual service every year, and Raymond personally performed every inspection, every oil change, every small adjustment. Victoria drove it up Highway 1 every Sunday morning, rain or shine, from her grandfather's old house in Pacific Heights out to Half Moon Bay and back. She had asked Raymond on the day she handed him the keys to the garage whether he would be willing to be the only mechanic on earth permitted to touch that car for the rest of its working life. Raymond had said yes. It was the easiest yes he had ever given. Preston Whitmore, as Victoria's lawyers had predicted, was convicted of multiple counts of wire fraud and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. His name was added to the national blacklist of decertified automotive professionals. He served his sentence in a medium security facility in Lompoc, California. Raymond never visited him. Raymond never thought about him again for more than a minute at a time. 3 years after that rainy Monday morning, Raymond Nelson stood in the doorway of his own shop with a cup of coffee in his hand and watched his daughter, now 10 years old, show a 12-year-old neighborhood kid how to correctly hold a torque wrench. Marcus Alvarez had become a certified Ferrari Classiche technician in his own right. Jimmy Chen had opened a second location of Henry Nelson and Son in Berkeley. The shop employed 9 people. It had a 6-month waiting list for collector car work. It had the year before been written up in a national magazine under the headline, "The Little Shop in West Oakland That Ferrari Owners Trust with Their Lives." Dorothy came out of the office and stood next to him. "Raymond, Mama, your father is proud of you. I know, Mama. He's proud of his granddaughter, too. I know, Mama. And I'm proud of you. Raymond put his arm around his mother's shoulders. Together they watched Lily, her dark curls tied back in a bandana, her small hands sure and quick, teaching a neighborhood kid that the engine was going to talk and his job was to listen. Somewhere in the city, a $12 million Ferrari was idling perfectly on a quiet street in Pacific Heights. Somewhere else, a former hedge fund manager's son was folding prison laundry and counting the days to his release. And somewhere inside of Raymond Nelson, the man who had once been called a grease monkey, in front of his 7-year-old daughter, the father who had been told he did not belong in the room with the wealthy, the son of Henry Nelson of West Oakland, who had spent 11 years waiting for someone to let him speak, there was a quiet and permanent understanding that the world had sorted itself out exactly the way his father had promised him it eventually would. He had been underestimated his entire life. He would never be underestimated again. He was Raymond Nelson. He was his father's son. He was his daughter's father. And he was the master technician whose hands and whose ears and whose quiet, unwavering dignity had turned one humiliation in a luxury showroom into the beginning of everything he had ever dared to want. That is his story. And it is true, every word of it, in every way that matters.